There are some DMNX Enterprise customers who have asked for the ability to access the firmware release notes when they download firmware from the global server to their DMNX repository. This function has been built as a customization after specific customer requests. If your customer wants this function, it must be submitted as a customization request. More details on this process will be shown at the end of this video. Let's take a look at how this function works. After the customization has been installed, the steps to take are: 1. Create a firmware configuration template. Create a new template. In our case, we will call it the Rico Software Server 2, because we already have one called Rico Software Server. Our description will be firmware release notes. Make sure that Download from Rico Software Server is selected. Save the template. 2. Create a configuration check task that uses the template you just created and execute it against the desired machines. 3. View the task log to see that the task is completed. If you filter on configuration, it is easier to see when the task took place. In our case, the result shows that the firmware on the device does not match the firmware on the global server. During the execution of this task, DMNX goes to the Rico global server and downloads the firmware package, which can be found in the DMNX repository. In our case, it was firmware for an MPC 3002. When you select the firmware from the list in the repository, it displays all of the module names included in that firmware package. You can see that it also displays the release notes. These were automatically downloaded with the firmware package because of the customization. You can scroll through the release notes, or you can download them as an HTML file. At that point, you can save and view the file, and if you want, you can later print the file to a PDF. This shows the firmware history, including the current release as well as the previous releases. Another thing that this customization provides is for the administrator to set a priority for the firmware package. If the administrator deems it to be a critical or non-critical update, they can set the priority in the repository listing for that package. Sometimes administrators choose not to update to the latest firmware if everything is working properly, so as not to risk destabilizing their devices. In that case, they can read the release notes, see that this is a minor update that doesn't address any known issues they are having, and they can mark this as a non-critical update. If, on the other hand, they see in the release notes that this update will stop a security vulnerability, they may want to mark it as a critical update. Then, later, when they create a new firmware template, they can choose only the critical packages to include. To do this, they would create a new template, choose File in the repository, and select the appropriate packages that have the critical priority on them. Then create a configuration task to apply it to the appropriate devices. To submit a customization request, go to Lotus Notes and send an email to Customization Support with the subject line, Customization Submission for DMNX Firmware Release Notes. You do not have to enter all of the details about your customer here. Once the Customization Support Group sees your email, they will send you the form to fill out with all your customer details. This form asks for information about the customer, about you as the requester, and about the customer's environment. Since most customizations have a fee associated with them, the form also asks for responsible financial parties, although this particular customization does not currently have a cost associated with it. Notice at the top of the form, the customization requirements are 50 MFPs or $300,000. Even though this customization is free, it will not be available to every customer. It is available only to those who meet the customization threshold.